The Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah, in the famous discussion on Bechira, says something as follows, that in Perek Chamishi, I believe it is, I have the right Perek. Today's Hey. Rambam says as follows, a very, very famous Rambam. Halacha Hey says the Rambam Shema Tema Valei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yedea Kol Ma. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows everything Kodim Shiyeh before it began. Shezei Tzadik Rosh Lo Yeda. Im Yada Shu Yeh Tzadik Im Efshel Lo Yeh Tzadik Im Tema Sheyeda Shu Tzadik V'Efshel Sheyeh Rosh V'El Yoda Adov Al Buriyoi. So therefore, the question the Rambam raises, which he already raises before already in Perek Dalet, is that the question of Yediyah and Bechira. If we come along and say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows everything before it actually starts, so what happened to the Bechira of an individual? So the Rambam says, one has to know that this is a very, very, as wide as the river, as the ocean. There are many different yisodos and mountains which are based on this, which means this is one of the most important questions, because if there's no idea of Bechira, so the question of schar ve'oinesh, if everything is predestined, the Rebbe talks about Arichas and Nebuchim also, if you have everything which is predestined, so therefore there is no Bechira, and therefore how do we have the concept of schar ve'oinesh, of punishment and reward? Everything's going to happen anyway, like a pre-programmed robot. So how do you come along and say that we have this whole business, etc., and b'charto b'chayim? So Rambam says this question, which has bothered philosophers all over the place, says the Rambam as follows. And the Rambam gives a whole discussion. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not someone who knows something like we do. The two things. There's a person, and then after the person you have the seichel. Elohi Yisborach Shmoi v'daitoi echad v'daitoi shel adam yechol hasik dovaz al buris. It says the Rambam that the seichel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is together with him, and this is not something which we're able to understand, because this is beyond our whole situation. As it quotes the Psokim, etc., etc. Now the Ravid, of course, gets very excited about what the Rambam said, and says, Omar Avraham that this author did not do what everybody else. He was so therefore, at the end of the day, since the Ravid, if you have a question, so answer it. All the Machabrim, all the different authors before the Rambam asked the question, they gave it certain teretz in whatever way they did. But how come when the Rambam began, but he didn't actually give a teretz, he just left it with the concept of Emunah. Now, basically, the idea which the question that I've, for example, the Rambam gives a whole discussion that how can you go then, what's his name, how can you punish Pharaoh for what he did, etc., etc. He was just doing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had told him, that Avodah B'Inawayim, they're going to be there for so many years. So we have the famous medrash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave different nations the opportunity to choose if they want to be Meshabed, Klal Yisrael Mitzrayim or not, in the Golus or not, and they actually went ahead and they chose it. So therefore they are getting, as the Rambam says in the Geras, the Alter Rebbe says in the Geras HaKodesh, that is the reason why the person who has punished another person gets punished, because ala nizak, the person who's supposed to be punished is in nigzum and hashamayim. It is something hashamayim, and he has no self-control of it. However, in this case, if you come along and say that paroi, so just like the person gets punished for choosing al reya b'chirosai, so also paroi gets punished al reya b'chirosai. Now the Rebbe in many places actually gives a different biurim on this question of the Rambam, and the Rebbe mentions that you do find many times, for example, everybody knows that the sun is going to go up tomorrow. And everybody knows that tomorrow is going to be Tuesday and the day after is going to be Wednesday. Now, there's not the idea, force that it's going to be. What is the shaila? What is the basic shaila? Is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows everything beforehand. So it's as if he is forcing us to do something. So the Rebbe, it's not true, because just like the Rambam says that the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows something is not the regular, normal way that we have, but it's beyond us. But even if you're going to come along and say that that isn't exactly that is the situation, but you want to look at it from another angle, the very fact that we know that certain things are going to happen, the sun is going to go up and the moon is going to go round, and all the different things that we know for a fact are not machriach, do not force anything to actually happen. And that even goes further and says that, for example, a novi, all of these things that people know that things are going to happen and they actually happen. So that's not the pshat that you're Yedi. If you go to see someone throwing a ball out of a window and you know it's going to fall down, that does not mean that because you're looking at it and you're 100% knowledgeable that it's going to fall down, you're actually going to go ahead and going to be machriach. That forces the ball to go down. The ball is going down because of the law of gravity. And the guy went ahead and he actually dropped it down. But you cannot come along and say that the reason why the idea that which I know that this is going to actually happen is based on the fact of my idea is wrong. It's not because of that is the way it goes. And it is for the idea is not machriach, does not in any way force the actual item to actually take place, which you can actually learn if you want to learn in the Rambam how the pshat is. So if that is so simple, says the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's machshava, it knows from a level which is higher, because bichlal, when the question is asked, that's if you take a look and you say that there, as the Rambam says, everybody would be on the same level. But the Rambam says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the midash l'mayla mimenu. So the Rebbe, of course, quotes the famous difference between a yediyah as when it comes down in spheres, as we know that the Maharal, the Derech Sesecha, where the Tzemach Tzedek discusses the Machlekes, the Maharal and the Rambam. So the Rambam is talking about who Yediyah, Muhammad Yediyah, when it's already he's being mislavish in spheres. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes into the level of spheres. So then you can have the Shaila. But when you talk about it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Maila, then it's a different situation. The whole situation is completely different and has nothing to do. The linkage is of such a way that there's absolutely no connection whatsoever with the way it doesn't happen. The reality that we have down here has nothing to do with the emissary reality of Emunah and Bechira and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu works it upstairs. So therefore, as a result of that, the kasha really doesn't actually begin, because you're talking about two separate situations completely. So we have it down here, Bnei Adam, which is the question of a mugbul, which is the question of gvul. Mashengi, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows it, is something which is totally gvul and goes out of the whole situation. Then, of course, you have what the Rebbe mentioned very in the famous Sikha, which he said after the Shiva for his brother. If that's the case, we have another problem. The problem actually is that if we come along and we say that the whole Yedidus Haneshama Lamata is because Aliyah, that Yedidus, that Tzerech Aliyah, that eventually when the Neshama comes, since it's Chayav Alekei Hashem Ad Telefona, that the Neshama was on such a high madrega before it came down. So what's the whole purpose of coming down? So we have to say, as the Alter Rebbe says in Torah, because if you sell for 4, if you buy for 4 and you sell for 4, that's not considered to be business. You're not gaining any profit. You come exactly the way you left. So you must come along and say, Yeridah Tzorech Aliyah, that the whole thing that we come down here is because of the Aliyah we're going to get out of it. So then you have the kasha. First of all, you have the kasha that you see many different people that you don't really see that the Nashama has really had an Aliyah. They were showing all their life, etc., and you don't know whether they did Teshuvah, even though we do say that every person before he actually leaves this world does do Teshuvah, or even on Yom Kippur, the Mittel Rebbe says that after the Kal Shebekalim is Chayzer B'Teshuvah, and the Rebbe always quoted the Chsam Sofer, that the Chsam Sofer has a psak that if a person jumps off the roof, and it takes a few seconds till he hits the bottom, so we don't call him a Ma'abed Atzmi Ladas, when we come along and say it's a Zicher, and in those few seconds, a person did Teshuvah, and as we know, that Manash Tzadik Shema Hira Believer, if you have just one Hirur, that you're going to be Mahara B'Teshuvah, that already makes you a Tzadik Gomer, the Rebbe's gives which he quotes in the Zerua. So therefore, as a result of that, every person has. But the question, of course, is the Rebbe says, if that is the case, and if we come along and say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically wants us, that we have to have an aliyah, which is greater than what the Yerida comes down, so it has to come true. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it, if this is the will, if this is the Ratzon Hashem, that every neshama which comes down Lamata has to have a higher madrege, than when he came down, so we also don't have any bechira. So the bechira is, there is no real bechira, because at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what he wants is certainly going to happen. And what he actually wants is that we should have an aliyah more than the Yerida. So therefore, as a result of that, bechira is really taken away from us in that situation, because every person at the end of the day has to become what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him to become. So where the question again arises, what do we do when we come the inyan of bechira? So the Rebbe, based himself on Ashtikol Kudatera, says Amora Dikepshat, that the idea of Yerida Tzerech Aliyah is certainly going to happen, because that's his Ritzayin Hashem. The question is, how quick is it going to happen? Whether it's going to happen slowly, whether the person himself is going to slowly be boicher, ubacharto b'chaim and Torah mitzvahs and does what he has to do, or it can take a long time. The bechira that a person has is, how long is this situation going to last? Is the inyan of aliyah going to be very, very quickly? Or the person has the bechira that if he wants to stretch it out, it could be 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, till eventually he changes his whole lifestyle and becomes the way it should be. So the bechira is not so much in what happens, because what happens is HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the person to have an aliyah. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a person to have an aliyah, so therefore he has to have an aliyah. No question about that. The question is, how long is it going to take? Is it going to take a long time till the person reaches that level? And as they said by the Baal Shem Tov, the neshama comes down for 70, 80 years till you do a toiva, and the neshama comes down to have this aliyah. So therefore, it says the Rebbe, the bechira is in the quickness, whether you're going to do it right away or whether it's going to take a long time. But at the end of the day, the sach hakol is that there has to be an aliyah on the neshama, because that is the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, the idea of bechira is in essence the situation. Now, in another teretz, which I don't know who I heard it from, but another teretz is as follows: in the majority of cases, when a person does a mitzvah or an aveira chas v'sholom, you don't find that a person before he does the mitzvah is worried that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows about it before. That means in mitzias, the person, when he goes ahead and he does the aveira, he's not saying, I'm right now, the reason why I'm doing the Avera is because Baruch Hu knows anyway I'm going to do the Avera. He does the Avera because it's around, so because at the end of the day, the Yetzer Hara is the one that's actually forcing him. So therefore, he doesn't realize, he's not amazed in that situation of realizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's forcing him. The Rikah is that what comes out from all of these terutzim, that what the Rambam is saying, that a person has to realize that the bechira, this is the Yisod HaEmunah, that we give, and that every person, whatever the person is, whatever situation a person might find himself, he's always has, and as Alter Rebbe writes in the Torah, that you have people who don't know they're Jewish, as we see today. There's plenty of people, they also don't know if they're Yidden, they don't have this whole concept of whether they should be Chart or B'chaim, but that every Yid has the Bechira to be, as the Rambam says in the previous chapter, can be either as great, and in this chapter, Chamishi, can be either as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. That means, does not like the Alter Rebbe means like a Tzaddik Gomer, because the Alter Rebbe says, you can't be a Tzaddik Gomer. But a Beinani, Gacharei Kol Odom Yimshech, everybody can be a Beinani. So therefore, this gives us a tremendous chizur, that everybody has this bechira, and everybody can choose whatever he wants, and the ikos azaynu b'chato b'chaim, that we should choose life.